Hello, everybody. It's been a long time. Yeah, it has. I confess it has. And I have my reasons. And forgive me if this looks a little different. I know it looks different, the lighting, the everything, and even my hair. Yeah, I cut my hair off. Yeah, no, I got this interesting duality going on with my hair. It's like I cut all the perm out back here and I left it up here. So it speaks to the indecision in my life, probably. Any rate, it's good to see you guys. And also, this camera is different because I had technical difficulties. The camera that I usually use, I forgot to charge up the little Bluetooth lavalier mic I have for it. And then I was going to use another camera, but the battery in that lavalier mic wasn't working. So I'm using this little tiny little HD camera I have that does not have a mic port at all. So at the very least, you might have to turn the sound up on your speakers. I I know I'm late. I want to talk about Prince. I want to talk about Prince and his meaning to our generation, the boomers. If anybody else is watching is not a boomer, a late boomer, like I am, you'll still learn a lot because it's not just about Prince. You know how, you know me, I get these revelations, and that's the key to my sharing. I need to share what he gives me. And I got some revelations which I found pretty interesting regarding his life, and even more so his death, as his death might indeed be a sign of the times, not one of his album titles. So forgive me that this comes a little late. I'm backed up. I got a lot of things to share with you over the course of the next few videos, but I've been watching the videos, and I'm gonna use my notes because I don't want to forget anything. And I did, as it poured out, I wrote it, so I want to respect what was given as I wrote without omitting things. Now I've watched the videos and all the updates, and I know that they aren't even doing that anymore because the news has moved on. But in all the articles and the updates that I saw, they all spoke prominently about his life and even more so about his death. But I felt I needed to speak to what Prince represented to my life. And in fact, the lives of my whole generation. Like I said, the late boomers, those born at the end of the baby boom. First off, there was that day that when I found out what had happened. We'll probably all remember that. I was in a restaurant picking up some lunch, a Thai restaurant as a matter of fact, and I saw concert footage on the television above the bar. And I thought to myself, wow, whoops. I got closer and I was like, it's Prince. Huh, what's going on with Prince? Or what's coming up with Prince? And I was so focused on the dancing and the concert footage, because even that took me back, that I didn't even look at the ticker tape that was running beneath the footage initially. And then once I did, and I saw that he had just died at 57, just 3 hours before that, I just started crying. I just started saying, no, 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 and the tears just started coming, and they just started coming, and I just couldn't stop crying. And I was standing in this restaurant just glued to the television screen above me and just going, no, 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 and just crying. And it's a Thai restaurant, so the owner is Thai. I don't know if he's born in this country or not. But then, Prince was international, but he didn't really get it. And even as I wrote this, I cried again. I cried a lot following his death. I read articles, and every time I thought of him, even if I wasn't reading it, I just started crying. So anyway, I was in this Thai restaurant down in South Florida, not the entertainment mecca, because I heard LA closed the streets and had a big party, and of course Minneapolis did. Places like that, either an entertainment capital like LA or his hometown, will recognize the significance of his contribution, of his existence to our existence. So they celebrated his life in massive ways. I'm down here where it's mostly people from the islands, and nobody I knew mentioned it. Nobody I encountered even mentioned it. That's just to show you what an alien land I'm in for me. Any rate, so the owner of the restaurant didn't really know how to respond to my tears. He just kind of was awkwardly said, you must have been very close. And so between sobs, he was a big part of my life. And that was it. That was it. That was it. That was the key. That he was a big part of my life. No, I never personally met him. At one of his concerts, I got to hang out afterward with Roger Troutman. Remember Roger and the Zap Band? That was pretty cool. I'll digress for 1 second, tell you a little bit about that story. At any rate, went to go see one of his concerts, The Time, Morris Day, Zap Band, Prince, off the chain as ever. And then afterward, was in the lobby with one of my classmates, and looking for, trying to figure out, if we're gonna call a cab to go home or whatever. And Roger Troutman came out in the lobby, and he was signing autographs. And when I walked by, he was like, "Ooh," he was flirting and stuff. I guess he thought I kind of had it going on back then, Anyway, he was flirting, and he was asked, and he looked out through the crowd and asked what I was doing afterward, where I was going to go. And I looked at my friend. I said, "We getting ready to go back to the dorm." And he said, "Do you want to go back to the dorm?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess." He said, "Well, you want to hang out with me?" And I was like, "You want to hang out with him?" And she was just as uninterested. She was like, "Yeah, I guess." She was still looking around for a phone. And so anyway, he had his people take us through the crowd to the back, to downstairs, to the limo. And once we got to the limo, oh my God, I got in and I got scared. I was like, oh my God, what if he thinks we're those kind of girls? if he expects, he have to know that he ain't getting nothing, da 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 da. Oh my God, I kind of panicked. So after he finally, got finished signing the autographs or whatever, came down and got in the car, first thing he said, "Oh, my two favorite things is fried chicken and P-U-S-S-Y." And I said, "Well, you ain't getting either one here." He kind of laughed. And so we started leaving and going to some of the other after party things where he was supposed to be signing autographs. And everywhere we went, when we got out of the limousine, they assumed that I was a star too. So I was signing autographs everywhere he went. And we went to those things, and we went back to the hotel. And Roger and I, my classmate, fell asleep. And but he and I sat up all night talking, and we talked and we talked. And this man, he told me about all the amazing things he was doing in Cincinnati, his hometown, about how he and his brothers were buying up property in just our communities that were all beat down and run down, and he would get it, and then he'd fix them up and give them back to the people so they could live in them in better places. It wasn't like he'd fix them up and kick them out like they do today, but he would get so excited talking about what he was doing to give back to his people. He would start talking. He illustrated it like he jumped up on the bed at one point and started jumping up on the bed, and he said, "You see, it's like this." And he took his harmonica, and he took the harmonica, and he said, and we take it, and we clean it up, and we fix it up, and we give it back, say, "Hey, here, you want this?" And that's the spirit that Roger Troutman had. And I don't tell my Prince, but I have to tell this story because it's in the same genre, and it was after Prince concert, and this is one of my most salient memories of that time and that mentality. And he said, "Here, you want this?" And he prided himself on having this construction company that, with his brother, that gave back to the people. He had an agenda with his celebrity to uplift and edify and empower and bring us up out of the mire the ghetto. So, needless to say, I mean, literally, we talked till morning, like sunrise, till they came. So these people came and knocked on the door, told him that it was time for him to go and get ready, that the bus was about to take off, and they were going to go to the next city. And then he said, "Oh, well, you can chill." He let me and my classmate just stay in when we said, check out till noon. And he got his stuff and left and let us sleep. And so needless to say, I was really devastated when I learned that his brother killed him. And I'm sure you all will remember that too. It's another part of our history, of our life as a collective. Just like this death is a part of our life. They're a member of our family, so to speak. And so is Roger. So I need to acknowledge that. Before I go in. And that's exactly what I'm talking about how when I said Prince is a part of my life, that was a very integral memory, a part of my memory, one of my memories, integral to my life. And part of what puts us together psychically, spiritually. Our values are represented so often by the music of our era. Music is a historian. My dog is very jealous of the other one. Now, the other one's right here, but he just decides he doesn't want him next to us. Chill, please. Ironically, his name is Love. Can you believe it? Anyway, so music, like I said, music is a historian, and it chronicles our lives. And certain songs and artists dominate entire eras of our lives, and particularly those which mark our coming into adulthood. And artists like Roger Troutman, that whole Minneapolis sound, with Prince at the helm, he did that. He did that for us. Everyone in my generation remembers the first time they heard Prince. All the girls were like, "Ooh, who is this cute, aloof," maybe we didn't use those words, but that's what he was, phenom that played every instrument and created an entirely new sound on his debut album. We all wondered, who is this? And we, I think it was it Soft and Wet, which was the first, and maybe some of us knew what that meant, maybe some of us didn't, because I know I was still at the back end of my elementary school. No. I think I was, I was in high school, I think. Yeah, I think so. But anyway, still there was a degree of innocence, some degree. And energy. He came out with this whole new, incredible energy and sex and screaming raw rebellion shooting through electric riffs and chords like an ejaculation. I mean, it literally, and that's what he projected. Like he was constantly having an ejaculation. That's his music was that feral, All of Prince's music was like a first orgasm to a generation just coming into their sexuality, whose hormones, all of our hormones, our energy, and the screaming raw rebellion found perfect, unrestrained expression in Prince's Purple Fireworks. I have to say that it's just how I wrote it, because that's exactly how I felt about it. It wasn't the same as Rick James, who we love. We love Rick James. But he had like a sexual geyser which pumped and gushed with a thick, dark undertone, It wasn't like Cameo, who we adored, and whose plucky bass line and moan and owls ooze and hump through the sticky air of the best basement house parties. And I have a Cameo story too. I got to hang out and meet them years later. at Sinbad Soul Music Festival, and they actually brought me up on stage, and I was actually they didn't bring me up on stage then. I met them at the festival, and then I saw them again at another concert. Yeah, saw them again at another concert, and they were coming through the audience, and I called out, and they looked over and they said, "Lisa, come on!" And I just got out of my seat. My date was checking our coats, and I followed them on stage, and I was jamming on stage. When he came back, he was looking around and saying, like, "Where is she?" And then they pointed out, "Your date's up there." I've had fun in this life. I kid you not. It ain't over. Shut up, please. But anyway, it wasn't like Cameo. Prince was different. Cameo had this ow, which oozed and humped through the sticky air, the best basement house parties. No, Prince rather was, he actually blew the ceiling off the basement, and then the house, and then he launched us straight into the stratosphere to dance, to go crazy among the stars, you know? Prince wasn't even like Michael Jackson, who was probably the biggest contemporary at that time. And I want to add something here too. Even though Prince and Michael Jackson were the biggest stars of the day, white, black, blue, green, purple, or otherwise, MTV was, was new and huge, and the only game out there with regard to this new visual music form. They refused to let Prince or Michael Jackson on the label. I mean, on their videos on the air. It was just that racist, and I think that needs to be pointed out, because there's a generation that's not this now, and even our generation doesn't really recognize just how much racism we have come through. We ain't talking about Sojourner Truth or Harriet Tubman or even Malcolm X. We're talking about in our generation, there was still so much racism that they wouldn't let the biggest stars in the world on MTV. As a matter of fact, Warner Brothers, the label that they were on, had to, that Prince was on, and Michael Jackson had to threaten to pull all their other artists off of MTV if they did not let them on. And that's how they got on. They had to literally do an LBJ. That's a or a boycott. It's another obscure reference I won't even get into. But at any rate, he wasn't like Michael Jackson either, who we grew up with and felt like a brother, you know? We loved Michael like our brother. As a matter of fact, every blue moon, I still have a dream of Michael Jackson hanging out at my house where I grew up, just kicking it. Because I felt that way about Michael. He was my brother. And he filled us with so much music that we had to dance with him just to release it. Even babies love Michael Jackson. You could sit a baby who's not even able to walk yet in front of a TV with Michael Jackson on it, and that baby would just get to rocking and gyrating. I mean, just bouncing. It was so infectious that the babies were even riveted to their new sparkly friend on the television screen. Michael had this innocence. He was our innocent, amazing sibling who made us want to dance and love. But Prince was like the bad boy who moved into the neighborhood, and right when we got our periods and our boobs and boys started jacking off relentlessly, he was that bad boy who just moved into the neighborhood and stood in the middle of the street and screamed. You know, none of us before him really, when we were coming into all of this awakening and all these chemicals jumping off in our bodies, we didn't know what to do with all of this new visceral energy, you know, pulsating through our loins. But Prince came along and he said, "I'll show you what to do with it," and he just stood in the middle of the neighborhood and just screamed. That's what Prince did, and that scream was like a clarion call. Giving voice to the naked, unrestrained adolescents screaming for release within us all. And we ran into the streets to heed that scream's demands. "Let's go crazy," he screamed. "Yes, yes." And we did. And that was like, whew, it was so primal. And while Michael Jackson skipped down our street and made us want to dance and love, Prince's pubescent siren song made us want to dance. And yeah, you can read my lips. Wholeheartedly. Not that I was doing that back then, but that's what it was. I was a dance machine. I was a dancing maniac. And so between with Prince and that, oh my God, you know, I used to win every dance contest because I was so, but everybody danced a lot then. That's what we did. We didn't get high. We didn't do drugs. So I don't think a lot of us even had sex yet, but we would dance. We would dance our butts off. We would just come home drenched with sweat from parties and sock hops and everything else because we danced. And that was an era that made not disco, but dance music. Dance. And that was soulful with Slade and Cameo but it made you, Prince had a whole different energy. So the major, but more than that, more than just the sexuality of his music, he defined himself. Prince was not a label creation by any stretch of the imagination. He called the shots even from the very beginning. I read an article, another nod to the racism in this country and indeed the world, is in one of the Rolling Stone articles that are about him, and I've been reading various articles, learning a whole lot more about him than I ever did. When he first signed with the label, he told them out the gate, "Don't make me black." He recognized that would be limiting and put in a box. And as a performer myself, you know, I have felt the pain of being relegated to, you know, sister girl, even for voiceovers, when clearly, you know, I could do more than just, child please, There's some sisters that can out, sister girl me, but, you know, I figured I could do a variety of things, Olay and Toyota, all kinds of mainstream things, but as a black artist, you tend to get relegated because you are black. So I get that. And as he would be graced with fair skin and an ambivalent look, people could wonder and not be pigeonholed. Whereas Michael, under the pressure of that same racism, that same rabid racism, was pinched and pulled and squeezed and pressured for the type of acceptance that his talents deserved to transform himself chemically and medically and all other kind of ways, just so that he could transcend that box. So we have to understand a bigger dynamic. There's so many comedians who beat Michael Jackson up and blah blah blah, but Prince effortlessly was able to take advantage of that filter through which this racist world sees us. And he's not the first, or none of them. I mean, think all the way back. Look at Nat King Cole. Nat King Cole's hair wasn't like that naturally. All those people back then, you know, they didn't have the technology that Michael Jackson had at his disposal to make his face white, but they sure would sit under some lye to relax that Kunta Kinte hair. This Kunta Kinte hair. So, at any rate, you know, that was he did from the very beginning. He called the shots, and so they marketed him as something that had this androgynous appeal. And so, if you recall, the first album, For You, I guess was the first one. He had a big afro, and after that, got that Process, and Lighten made sure that, you know, he was fairer in the subsequent albums, and though he should have been able to, without any type of manipulation, be a phenomenal crossover success, given his other worldly talents, he recognized the game out the gate, and he defined himself, and we felt that. We felt his complete control. That's what we felt. And the major difference between then and now, with regard to manipulation of young people's hormones and all that was that even though they're still doing that egregiously, manipulating the burgeoning hormones of adolescents today through the music with this hyper sex thing, Prince wasn't in and of himself even remotely manipulative. He was 100% authentic. That was him. All of that heavy lusting, that was him. Sex and music was literally woven into his DNA. Literally woven in. And his brilliance, his uber sexuality, his incomparable musicianship. Oh my God. The pain, the rage that he had, and passion were as naked and direct as his second album cover, in which he sat shirtless and unsmiling, looking directly at you with his name, simply his given name, inscribed simply above his head. Prince. This is who I am, is what that album cover said. And period. That's who he was. And that's what one of the things we were drawn to in him. Everything about him said that. He gave very few interviews, and when he did, well, you know what? He gave a lot of interviews. I learned since have learned, because I've been finding them everywhere on YouTube. But to our knowledge in general, along the years, I guess relatively, he gave relatively few interviews. And when he did, he measured his words. They were thoughtful and measured, not for you, but he tabulated the letters, the commas, each phrase, each thought in his head, as if arranging them like his music, so they would accurately and clearly convey him. Nothing about him was a people pleaser. He contained and released his energy for his use. At the same time, he seemed to have an odd love and disdain for people, which is why he continued to live in a small town in his home state, so he'd be free to walk around and be normal, but lived alone in a 65,000 square foot compound. Another paradox is that in his first television interview, he surrounded himself with extras from his music video. But when you watch it, it seemed like they were forbidden to even blink while he talked. It was like they were props, like one collective prop. And for years is another thing. He surrounded himself with a band of extraordinary musicians. But even in the movie Purple Rain, he made it clear that it was his way or the highway. It was his band, and you were going to do it his way or you were dispensable. So Prince was the embodiment of every contradiction, both natural and supernatural. Which is the perfect segue to my next point here. Steven Tyler of Aerosmith called Prince a saint. It was particularly painful, I'm sure, for him to hear of Prince's passing, because Steve Tyler has acknowledged his battle with drugs and alcohol. I mean, it's a cliche. Drugs, sex, and rock and roll. I mean, that's just par and parcel to the industry. So, why we expect them to be able to give us the caliber of show that they do, especially Prince. Prince performed on the level of the Michael Jordan, like the highest caliber professional athlete. He gave his all as a physically, which is very demanding. The dancing that he did, the jumps, the leaps, the spins, the James Brown splits in heels while singing, and bounced around from instrument to instrument, from city to city, night after night, year after year. We demand it. It's not like us, who we have a job and we feel under the weather, we call and say we're not coming in. They don't have that luxury. They don't have that luxury. The show must go on, as the saying goes. And we pay for our tickets and we expect a show. We don't expect any show. We expect a doggone good show to live up to all of the best takes in the videos that we've seen, the best recording of the recordings we've heard. We want to be so perfect and so rah-rah. But when they do that and they give us, they turn themselves inside out over all those years, and to maintain that, they have to supplement their chemistry with one form or another of drugs, be it prescribed or so-called illicit. And then we want to go, ooh, oh, they use drugs. Oh, ooh, Your ass couldn't do that for a day without some added stimulation. Do that on the caliber that they have. And that doesn't even count the rehearsals before they even get to that stage. Their whole lives are given to us. And people say, well, they get paid. Well, there's no amount of money that can really pay for what they give us. So we're hypocritical when we demand all this stuff of them, and then at the same time we expect them to be like us. They're not on any level whatsoever. So Steve Tyler knows that. I mean, he's never had been a multi-hyphenate like Prince. There's nobody else out here who can really compare it. Only person probably is close. Well, you know what? There is nobody. There's nobody that can compare to him at all on all those different areas and levels. With regard to showmanship, we have some show people. Beyonce, she gonna hurt eventually too. And Janet Jackson, who's having a baby, I hear. God bless you, Janet. But at any rate, Steve Tyler called him a saint. And he said that mainly because he knew that it could have been him at any given time. And by grace, he's still here. Now, I heard somebody else say once, years ago, which was food for thought, that they thought that Prince was Pan. You know Pan, the half goat, half man, Greek god of mythology who was this musically seducing god of male sexuality. That's an interesting thought. That would explain a lot. When you think about it, his uber sexuality, his unfathomable music ability, his irresistible sexual seductiveness, which kind of hypnotized an entire generation. And he did, interestingly, look like a lot of the little illustrations that I have looked up and seen about Pan. Look it up, Pan, the Greek god Pan, and you'll say, he does kind of look like Prince. And when you think about it, and God knows his music, like I said, was Pied Piperish in its seductive, irresistible, demanding sway. But it's just a thought. But the thing is, like, either way, in both views, whether if Steve Tyler was right that he's a saint, or if that other person was right that he was Pan, either way, he hearkened onto a very significant event, and that is Christ's return. Mm-hmm. Now you're wondering how the heck I'm going to tie Prince, his life, his death, with the second coming of Jesus Christ. Aren't you glad you hung in there? Yeah, it's about to get very deep, very interesting. Well, okay, let me explain a little bit. In Greek mythology, Pan died because Jesus was born, trumping the rule of Satan's kingdom and all of his lesser gods. And like the Apostle John, Prince later, as a proselytizing Jehovah's Witness, cryptically warned us in a 2009 interview that prophecy is what we all have to go on these days. Or I should quote him correctly. Prophecy is what we all have to go by now. That's what he said. Biblical prophecy, that is. And biblical prophecy speaks about the second coming of Jesus Christ. Now, it shouldn't be any surprise that I took this turn, because Prince's life took that turn. And if I'm talking about Prince, I have to embrace the evolution. and the general context of what's going on in our world right now. So I'm going to talk about 40, the number 40. And if you're hanging there with me, I'm going to bring it all together, okay? All right. The Bible is rife with examples of the significance of 40, you know? Oh, wait. I skipped a line which would tie this. All right. So, like I said, it's very significant or interesting that when he started talking about Bible prophecy, which leads to the second coming of Jesus Christ. And how interesting is that? That Prince would die in what is currently the 40th Jubilee following the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. I'm going to say that again. I personally found it very interesting that Prince would die in the middle of the 40th Jubilee following the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. What do you mean, Rael? Okay. All right. Now I'm going to do this explaining. The Bible is rife with examples. I'm going to tell you what about Jubilee. I'm going to tell you about all that. But the Bible is rife with examples of the significance of 40. You know, Noah sailed on the ark for 40 days and 40 nights of rain as God cleansed and repopulated the earth. Moses gave up his royalty and fled to the wilderness when he was 40 years old. And he went into exile for 40 years. He encountered God, and he fasted and prayed for 40 days and 40 nights before God gave him the 10 Commandments. Another significant resolution at the number 40. Then he led the Hebrews through the wilderness for, as we all know, 40 years. They reached an oasis just 40 miles south of the Promised Land. And once at its shores, they sent out a cadre of soldiers to spy out the land for 40 days. And as a result of their lack of faith, Joshua, Moses' heir apparent, prophesied that the sons of the doubters would be wanderers in the desert for another 40 years. Now, when God entered into a new covenant through Jesus Christ, Jesus retreated to the wilderness and fasted and prayed for, 40 days and nights. We all know that. And when he was resurrected, he showed himself to many different people for 40 days. I mean, I could go on. I literally really could go on and on and on. Believe me, I'm abbreviating this. But suffice it to say that 40 is a very significant number throughout the Bible. And as we close this 40th Jubilee, I can't help but find that interesting. Now, let me just explain a little bit more, okay? Because, you know, I'm still kind of learning about the significance of what a Jubilee is. I mean, I've heard it in church over the years, but and maybe you have too, but I want to break down a little bit more about how significant the Jubilee is and what the Jubilee really means, okay? If you have your Bibles, open to Leviticus 25:9. I should have prayed before this, shouldn't I? I'm definitely going to pray afterward. Okay. In Leviticus 25:9, Jubilee is described as, Leviticus 25:9 is what I said. Jubilee is described as the sabbatical year after 7 cycles of 7 years. So that's 49 years, okay? So Jubilee falls in the 50th year. So every 50 years following Jubilee, following the 7-7 cycle, the year is celebrated as a year of redemption. All right? The land is given rest. Debts were forgiven. Property was restored to its owners. Captives were set free. Slaves were released from bondage. Overall, it was a highly celebrated time, and for good reason. Okay? So that tells you a little bit about what Jubilee is. Okay? The 7 cycles of 7 years in which there is redemption. Okay? Now let's fast forward to the New Testament, Luke chapter 4, verses 18 through 21. And Jesus, after fasting 40 days and nights, which everybody knows in the wilderness, he begins his ministry. He begins his ministry after the 40 day and night fast. In verse 14, it says he returns to Galilee in the power of the Spirit. Okay? And upon entering the synagogue, and you will get in the Spirit if you fast and pray for 40 days and 40 nights, that's for sure. But even if you don't, if you abide in Christ and you seek the presence of the Holy Spirit and you pray in tongues, in your heavenly language, you spend any period of prayer and fasting, which I really do these days. It's a fast. I'm due one. But you will have the power of the Spirit. Hallelujah. Thank you. So he returns to Galilee in the power of the Spirit, clear about his mission, clear about his purpose of his life, clear about what he must do and how he must carry it out. In that 40-day fast, I believe his instructions were downloaded. This is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to play out, and this is what I need you to do. So he enters the synagogue in his hometown Nazareth. He opens the scripture and reads aloud from it. He quotes the prophet Isaiah from chapter 61, verse 1. And he says, and if you know it, you can say it along with me. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel. Oh my God, my battery's about to die. That's crazy. How can my battery be about to die? Okay, I'm going to go and get... How can this battery be about to die? And I haven't had it on that long. I'm going to go and get... Oh, I can plug it up right here, can I? No. It might die, and I have to do this in two parts. But he said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release of the captives and recovery of sight to the blind.